Oh, welcome back. I hope you are not holding your breath because you would have long been dead. It has been a long time since the Spiro Avenue road was open, and we are back. I am thrilled to be back. I would say that I don't really remember what to do or what I'm doing, but I don't think I ever really knew, so that's an advantage. But we are back. I'm thrilled to be back, and coming back is particularly wonderful when it means bringing back one of my top 3-4 guests of all time, not just in my view, but by the popular vote. Tony Paul, Detroit News. Welcome back, man.
Hey, man, good to be back. I love what you've done with the place.
Thank you.
It looks great.
Yeah, I did it mostly to impress you.
Yeah, well done. Mission
accomplished.
accomplished.
That was the goal.
Yep.
So mission accomplished.
Yep.
And so, look, when we originally discussed having you back here for this, I don't know, inaugural, re-inaugural, whatever you want to call it, episode, it was under a context of, okay, Tigers post-mortem, virtually. I mean, a couple games left, but virtually. And it was going to be, I think, almost entirely negative, at least on my end. I can't speak for you. There's been a little bit of a glint, flare, if not an entire fireworks show of joy that was sort of tacked on post-booking of this program based on the hire that they made. I want to, before we get into that and the sunshine and rainbows, I want to dip into my bread and butter where I'm my comfort level is and my comfort zone is just being miserable with the Detroit Tigers. And then we'll get to the optimism. I'll get there. But I want to say, as we head into the last few games here of 2022, I was thinking about this the other day. I can't decide, but to me, this is a subjective perspective. I don't care. You can disagree. This is one of the 2 worst Detroit Tigers seasons of my lifetime. Now, that does not mean by record. It doesn't mean it's one of the 2 worst teams necessarily. It's one of the 2 worst seasons when you're balancing my personal expectations, how much I just enjoyed it or not. The only season that really compares is the 2008 season, year 1 of Cabrera. Renteria's here. Everyone's excited.
They were supposed to score 1,000 runs.
1,000 runs. Cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
They finished last in the AL Central. Mm-hmm. So whether it's 1 or 2, I think it's on anybody's top 5 list if you're in my age range or younger for the worst Tigers fan experience recently. What the hell happened here? Why were they? How was a team that Chris Castellani, myself, Anthony Broom, measured people all across the block were saying, 82, 83 wins. Keith Law made fun of us at the time. Why were we not just wrong, but 30 games wrong?
Well, first, I would almost put this season up worse than that. This has been just awful. I mean, this was supposed to be the first time since they made the playoffs that they were at least going to, have hope of playing some meaningful baseball when the kids go back to school, as opposed to not playing any meaningful baseball after the kids got out of school. Literally, there was no meaningful baseball after mid-May with this team. And a bunch of things went wrong. Guys that, maybe had decent seasons last year didn't do what they, didn't follow up. Injuries were atrocious. And you can say that's an excuse, but it was. But on that front, I also think they need to figure out why they had the injuries that they had. They're all pitchers and they're all arms, and I'd like a deep dive into why that's going on. But brutal season, bad decisions by the front office, and here we are.
So I still think there's a really good argument for 2008 being worse, just because you go in with one of the best odds in Vegas to win.
Right.
You were, 06, you were a prohibitive favorite in the World Series. 07, you had the best record in baseball at the All-Star break. Sheffield goes down, everything falls apart. So in that context, personally, 08 was more miserable. But I'm 35. I've been paying attention for just shy of 30 years. Second worst season is still pretty bad, and I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, and I think the argument to be made for this season was that it's been 8 years since you made the playoffs. So there's this long gap now where you felt like now's the time where I thought they were going to make the playoffs, but I thought that they can be on the back burner, on the fringes of contending for that one of those wild cards. So it's been 8 years. Your fans are starving for a winner or anything. I mean, you saw last year they finished 8 games under 500, and the town went crazy. I mean, looking forward to this season because of where they were. So I just think the drought kind of just made this such a letdown. But I think as far as pure talent, and I would agree with you, 08 was a bigger bust. This season was, I think people were frustrated and kind of hated it early, and I think then they just kind of stopped paying attention. I bet you there's not many Tiger fans that know they've won, 6 in a row or whatever it is. There's 2 sweeps in a row. I bet you there's not that many that even know, because I think a lot of people just stopped watching.
How very Detroit Pistons of them, by the way. Like thanks. It's a little different because the baseball draft is such a crapshoot. Unless your name is Justin Spiro, you didn't realize Nolan Gorman was a steal in the late teens in the 18 draft. But it is still kind of annoying that they tumbled 4 or 5 spots with this meaningless. Like Eduardo Rodriguez, absolutely dealing today. Like, thanks, asshole. Like, we're like,
welcome back.
I'm glad. Yeah, welcome back.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, as a team at the time's 31 games under, literally. So thanks a lot. I am an AJ Hinch apologist. I think probably to the point of hypocrisy, to the point where I could be made fun of and I can't push back. I have no counter. Do you put anything this season on AJ Hinch? Do you think he's done an okay job and this was so beyond him? What's your read on his 2022 season just from the managerial?
I have no issues with AJ Hinch. Never had when they hired him. I thought it was a brilliant hire. Still think he's one of the best managers in the game. And the offense was so bad. Nobody could fix that. It was, historically almost until the last, till they perked up a little bit over the last, 3-4 weeks, historically awful, with a team that was supposed to be pretty good offensively. So I don't know how much you can put on him. I think he runs out the lineups as best as possible. I think he's good with the pitching staff. I just think he's a really good manager. And this season just went to hell in a hurry, and there was just no bringing it back. So I have no issue with him.
I'm with you 100%. I still say I wouldn't trade him for anybody. Mm-hmm. So Anthony Broom, friend of mine, thinks that I am beyond a hypocrite with the AJ Hinch apologizing, but I don't care. I love the guy. I just think this team was fucked from Jump Street. I will say I am a little bit confounded by the offense, just generally. You mentioned it. I think firing hitting coaches or pitching coaches or whatever is the definition of sacrificial lamb in sports. Baseball has, offensive coordinator in football, whatever, that's like a more real thing.
No, it's more hands-on.
Right,
You're calling the play.
Exactly.
You can't call the play for the hitter.
Exactly.
The hitter's either going to make an out or not. And
do you put any stock into his decision to at least through the season retain Scott Coolbaugh as the hitting coach? Because if you can't get fired for this offensive performance, I don't know what you can.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with keeping the staff in place during the season. I think there's going to be some hard decisions now made, and I especially think that's the case with the new president, who made it very clear that we, as the Tigers, are not going to swing at pitches out of the strike zone, and we are not going to throw pitches out of the strike zone. That was his whole dissertation. If you listen to his press conference, it was fascinating. I've never heard anyone break down baseball quite like that, going from the strike zone out, and it affects everything. And so he made it very clear that you're either going to, swing at strikes or you're not going to be on this team. And so I think they might look at, some hitting coaches who maybe are a little bit more analytical and a little bit more better with video and whatnot. I think you could see some changes on the staff. I don't have an issue keeping a staff through the season. What's the point?
It's more like fan catharsis.
No, fans want all coaches fired, and I get it. That's being a fan, and yeah. But as far as hitting coaches and pitching coaches, I think pitching coaches is a little bit. I think can have a little bit more impact on what a player does than a hitting coach. But I don't see why you make a change at the beginning of the season. This guy, Coolbaugh knows these hitters. He's worked with them, and I don't see why you jump ship in the middle of the season. But I think there could be some changes coming.
I agree with most of that, except for a minute ago you said that they have some tough decisions they're facing. I don't know how tough it is to say. Hey,
I didn't mean that necessarily with the staff as opposed. I think the tougher decisions are going to be with the roster.
Well, and I wasn't even planning to talk about Javier Baez, but I laughed my ever-loving ass off when Scott Harris made that comment about dominating the strike zone on both sides.
Right.
Is there a bigger gap between two principals than Javier Baez just as a human being and as a baseball player and someone dominating the strike zone. If that's the position, you have to get him out of here somehow, right?
Well, good luck with that. And he was asked about
I said somehow.
He was asked about, Scott Harris was asked about that afterward, of course, because that was the obvious question when you talk about dominating the strike zone. You want to swing at strikes, you want to pitch strike. Well, a big problem with the dominating the strike zone is Javi Baez, who just doesn't swing at strikes. And I think I read something at least a month ago or something like that. If Javi Baez would have gone up to the plate with no bat this season and just stood there, he'd probably have a 400 on-base percent. That's how much he swings at pitches out of the strike.
Why would anyone throw this guy a strike unless it's like 9-0 in the eighth?
The thing is he and that's just another thing. Like Javi Baez isn't that bad, right? I mean, we've seen him be pretty good.
Yeah.
Scott Harris has seen him be pretty good. Scott Harris has experience with him with the Cubs. There were signs last year that Javi Baez was kind of getting it back together a little bit as far as a little bit more plate discipline. He's never going to be a guy that's going to be completely plate discipline oriented, but God, he's not that bad. I mean, it's just like one thing goes wrong, it just snowballs. But they got to fix him. I mean, and I think Scott Harris made that pretty clear. I mean, you can't get rid of him, and I mean, you're probably, unless you find a taker on, but I don't think you're going to find one now. He's got an opt out, but he's not going to opt out if he has another terrible season. So you have to fix him. Ideally, you fix him. He has a great year, and then he opts out, and you move on and go a different direction.
Yeah, I mean the idea that we were so worried at some point of, we don't have this guy locked down. He can be out of here in 2 years. That is on a complete flip.
Yeah.
Where I never thought that. I was on this show with you, with Chris, with Anthony. I told anybody, with Evan. I talked to everybody I know saying, I don't want this guy here. I didn't want him at the time. And look, even I didn't see this coming. I thought when they signed him, it was better than Andrelton Simmons. I was like, okay, I'm not, you did something. It was just, he was my fourth or fifth choice.
You had four guys, and he was the fourth for most everybody.
Distant fourth.
I think most people wanted Correa.
I was a Seager guy myself, but Correa was second.
Which Correa could, be back on the market here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, go get him.
And that's going to be interesting to see how Scott Harris's philosophy does mesh with Chris Ilitch's willingness to continue to spend.
So your
but I mean, what are you going to do with Baez? You can't. I mean, you can't do anything.
You're stuck. You're
screwed right now.
I mean, maybe you can run into, like an Eduardo Rodriguez situation where he disappears, for a couple of months and you can save some money. I mean, is there anybody happier than Chris Ilitch that Eduardo went AWOL for a couple of months? The season's already lost. Yeah. And that was like what? I didn't do the calculation, like $9 million?
Probably saved him somewhere around $8 to $9 million. Yeah.
It just right into his pocket.
Yeah.
That's just.
I mean, ideally, you have to find a way to fix Baez or find some way to get him back to being somewhat the productive player. For two reasons. One, he becomes good again, and then you're happy to have him, or he becomes good again and he leaves. Either one of those scenarios, probably the latter is probably the preferred one.
Fix Baez. I mean, you need a hell of a mechanic for that. Your expectation going in to this year, I think you were somewhat in our boat. Like they'll be kind of decent.
Yeah, I thought that next year would be the year where they would contend, and I thought this year would be the first step. I thought that, we talked before, I thought that this year could have been that contending year if they actually started the free agent process earlier, which they didn't. No, I thought they'd be decent, and one injury after another. So, I mean, again, when you talk about you needed these young guys to be good or be pretty good, and they showed flashes, but then, a lot of them got injured. I mean, you lost your whole pitching staff by the end of May, for a variety of reasons. And it's not a bad pitching staff. I'll argue that if they're healthy, they're not.
I love Chris Fetter. I mean,
Chris Fetter's good.
Yeah,
if they had Chris Fetter during the heyday,
oh my God,
they might have actually been able to turn something out of that bullpen and won a World Series.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, clearly, he has a plan. That's why I say that pitching coaches can make a difference way more than hitting coaches. I believe that.
Oh, I agree. I mean, the Orioles with Leo and the Braves were loaded forever. For that exact reason, I would argue. So, look, we are going to get into the Scott Harris, hip hip hooray shit soon. I think this will be the last time I talk with you on mic about Al Avila, and I want to be done with it. But I think out of my own curiosity, I want to satisfy this, okay? I want to do like a brief autopsy on this guy. So before we move on, putting the bow on, here's my take on the Al Avila legacy in Detroit. I'm curious if you think I'm crazy. I think he's one of the 2 or 3 worst general managers in the history of this town. 1, 2, or 3, take your pick. I think he has one of, if not the lowest fan approval ratings in the history of this town. I hesitate to say most reviled because he seems like a good guy, but very low fan approval rating. And I think he is on the short list with 2 Lions executives, Chuck Schmidt and Matt Millen, as guys that somehow were the cockroach GM who could just not get fired no matter what they did in the wake of ample evidence that they need to go. He was in that top 3 in just terms of people asking themselves, what the fuck is this guy still doing here? Is anything I just said unfair, unreasonable? Is that a realistic take on the legacy? Even if that's not what you think, isn't that his legacy here? Isn't that what people think?
I mean, he's got to be up there. And personal feelings aside, because he's a good guy. I've known him for years. Yeah, I mean, you put Randy Smith in there too. I mean, if you want to add another Tigers GM.
Yeah, but
Randy Smith was terrible.
What did Randy Smith blow, though?
No, he didn't.
What did he blow?
But he had how many years, though? I mean, he had how many years? I mean, he was terrible too. So, and honestly, in a similar situation to Al Avila, in that he wasn't given the world to spend, but he was given some to spend, and it was terrible. He'd be up there. No, Avila. It didn't work, and I'm surprised. I thought it was going to work. And as we've talked about before, he was very instrumental under Dombrowski. I mean, he was, he was, when Dombrowski became president and GM, Avila was almost the GM for a lot of those moves. We've talked about him. He orchestrated the Cabrera move. He orchestrated the Cespedes Fulmer move that we talked about.
JD was his.
JD was his. He made a lot of the moves that Dombrowski as the chief executive gets credit for. So I thought it was going to work. I thought he had a very good baseball background in scouting and also an open mind to bring the Tigers, who were dead last. I mean, you remember the Billy Beane scene in Moneyball where there's this and then 50 feet of crap and there's us. Yep. That's where the Tigers were when it came to analytics. They're probably still like bottom 5 when it comes to analytics, but they're way better than they were. Because Avila was willing to at least embrace that, and Ilitch was willing to put some money into it, which hadn't been done before either. So I thought it was going to work, and it was a colossal failure, and it's unfortunate. He wasn't given the Dombrowski hand. We all can agree on that. Dombrowski made some brilliant trades as a Tigers general manager. I mean, fleeced for Carlos Guillen, Placido Polanco. I mean, Doug Fister. You can go on and on and on. He made like 1 or 2 bad trades, but he also had the checkbook that Mike Ilitch gave him. Al Avila didn't have quite that, so it wasn't the same situation. But he was given money at the beginning, and his choices were Jordan Zimmerman and Mike Pelfrey and Mark Lowe, and I mean, you can go on and Justin Upton, and I mean, just terrible moves. A lot of them you could have seen coming. I don't think anyone was thrilled about Jordan Zimmerman being their choice to replace Max Scherzer. So it just didn't work. And I also think that this team, scouting wise, has had so many of the same people in place for years and years and years. When you talk about Place and Bream and Chad and all these guys, that there's no movement there. You're not bringing, you bring in Sartori, you bring in Menz and the 2 young kids. But your scouting staff and the guys who do a lot of your drafting have remained the same for all these years. And I think that was a misstep. I think they missed the boat on that and not bringing in some fresh talent, fresh eyes.
All fair except one point. You're perpetuating a little bit of a common Detroit myth with Dombrowski spending. You couched it a little bit, but you tried to backdoor it. The spending thing, Dombrowski inherited the worst situation in the sport in 03.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he didn't.
But hold on. They were the prohibitive favorite in the World Series.
Mhm.
I don't blame Dombrowski that they lost. They were the prohibitive favorite in the World Series 3 years after with a middle of the pack payroll. They were like 17th in baseball, 16th in baseball in 06.
5 years after he got there.
Well, okay, 3 years after.
3 years after they bottomed
No,
out.
it was 4 years after because he got there in 02.
You know, he got there in November of 01. So
remember
splitting hairs, whatever.
November of 01.
But it was 5 years. It was 5 years is different than 3. They bottomed out in 3 years. Or
Fair.
3 years before.
Okay. Remember when they had Randy Smith as the GM under Dombrowski for like 3 weeks?
Yeah. Randy Smith and Phil Garner.
Yeah.
That was the end of that.
They're like, yeah, we're keeping. It reminded me of with the Wings, brought in Yzerman. They're like, yeah, Ken Holland's going to stay in. It's like this. Everyone knew that shit's not going to last, but Randy Smith's going to stay on as the GM. Dombrowski was GM within like 20 days.
Right.
I don't know. I want to touch on Dombrowski a little bit later, actually, but I'm a huge Dombrowski fan, and I'm just gonna.
Dombrowski's great.
I think he's
done well in a different way than he's done it. He's made great trades, and he's done it with a checkbook everywhere he's been. He's done it with a. Look at where he won.
Okay,
Marlins checkbook, Tigers checkbook, Boston checkbook. I mean,
I disagree.
That's been
06 was not checkbook. If you have the 16th highest payroll in baseball, that's not checkbook.
Well, no, but I would say that, and here's a point that I've tried to make before too. The 06 team was maybe during that heyday from 06 to 14. If you want to count 14, which I think you have to with that pitching staff.
Yep.
That heyday. 06 on paper might have been one of the 2 or 3 worst teams out of that whole heyday as far as talent. They caught lightning in a bottle, and it just worked for whatever reason. It was a good team.
Yep.
But if you compare that team to 11, 12, 13, even 14, no. And those were the teams that were bought and paid for much more than the 06 team. Especially the 06 team was great how they pieced that together. But if you stack up position by position, that team against, I mean, the argument used to be back when they were in the World Series in 06, people were like, I wonder how this team compares to 84. Doesn't. Like if you go position by position, the 06 team, they got hot, and I don't know how, but it was probably, it wouldn't even be top 4 of the most talented teams in that era.
That pitching staff was so funny, the rotation in particular. I mean, Kenny Rogers, obviously the postseason, he was unworldly. He didn't outrun. But, just solid regular season. Bonderman, Nate Robertson, rookie Verlander, who was good. Obviously,
he was good, but he wasn't
year,
great.
But he wasn't like the Verlander. He was, like a solid number 3. I just think it's hilarious. The one distinction that they had that was legitimate from all those other teams that separated them positively, they had the number 1 bullpen ERA in baseball.
Yeah, they had a good bullpen.
They never finished top like 12, 14 any other year since. I bet this year will be the exception.
This year.
Yeah, this is the first year that's the exception.
Yeah.
So that was the one, and I'm sorry, like, that does really matter. I mean, that's
clearly
a huge swing.
Clearly it matters.
So, I mean, it matters a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, going from the best bullpen to like the 19th, I mean, that's you're talking 10 wins. I mean, it's massive.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I'm not dogging Dombrowski at all.
I'm very sensitive.
Yeah, I
to Dombrowski-related issues.
Clearly. By the way, they're having issues in Philadelphia right now, too. They're about to blow it under him there. Which is, anyway, he's good. And the trades, I mean, the trades that he swindled people out of, I mean, if you just go back and look, I mean, did he made like one terrible trade, like the Alfredo Simon Suarez.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple others, but he did well with that. But he got the checkbook. But you can get the checkbook, you still have to spend it wisely. Someone can give me $1 million today and I could blow it, and not spend it wisely. And he spent it more wisely than Avila did. Avila paid, when he got the checkbook, he paid prime prices for not prime commodities.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's like having a media network in Michigan. You're starting, you got big budget, some rich guy founds it, and you're like, who I need? Braylon Edwards and Ryan Armani. I mean, certain times rich people make weird decisions that no one understands, and that's their prerogative. So I want to move into more positive waters here, because I don't want to be a negative Nancy this whole time. The Scott Harris era is here in earnest. I think this was one of the greatest examples of salvation to misery in my lifetime. certainly in the Tigers fan context, it reminds me a little bit of the executive version of the Pudge Rodriguez signing, where you're coming off that miserable, embarrassing 0-3 year where you had miracle comebacks at the buzzer of that season.
What were they down like 5 runs to the Twins?
It was like 6 or 7. It was worse than 5. Rally to beat the Twins. They won like 4 of their last 5 to avoid that embarrassment. But this reminds me of that, where you're at this low point and you're basically embarrassed and you hate your life as a fan to, holy shit, things just feel different. Pudge Rodriguez, we've learned a little bit more about wins above replacement, all that shit, but it felt different immediately when he was signed. Whether it was legitimate or not, I think it was vindicated, but it just felt different. This feels different to me. The Tigers have hope among their fan base, legitimate hope, not the Tony Dombrowski iteration of hope, where he always thinks things are going to work out. Your read on Scott Harris, am I overly jovial with this? I mean, am I exaggerating how big this is?
No, I think it's a surprisingly great hire by Chris Ilitch.
Shockingly! I never saw it coming.
And here's what's really impressive. And I don't know this for a fact, but how do you get Scott Harris? Okay, how does he get on Chris Ilitch's radar? Well, who would be the best name out there to go hire if you could, that everyone wanted? Theo Epstein. Yep. So clearly, Chris Ilitch made the call to Theo Epstein, who said, "No, I'm done." You know, he's doing his thing with
You think so?
I honestly believe that's how this had to have started.
Theory. You're not reporting that.
I'm not reporting this. I don't know this for a fact. But if you think about it, how is that guy? Chris Ilitch ran this search. A.J. Hinch didn't know Scott Harris, which everyone thought that A.J. Hinch was going to be involved in this, and he was. But everyone thought because of that, they'd get an A.J. Hinch guy, the Burns or whatever.
I wanted Lou now. Bring him back from the graveyard.
So that's, exactly.
That's who I wanted.
He was a name that popped up right away that you thought, well,
him or Harris were my two.
Exactly. So how does that happen? I honestly believe that Chris Ilitch said, we need a name or we're going to lose this fan base right now. I'm going to call Theo and see what he says. And Theo probably, and then again, speculation. I don't know this for a fact. Theo says, no, I'm not interested. Clearly he doesn't want to get back into the game as far as a GM or an executive. And he says, but I got this guy. That's the guy. And I believe that's how this started. Scott Harris's name wasn't on a ton of radars throughout this search process. It was kind of a surprise. It took the people in San Francisco by surprise. I think it's an excellent hire. I mean, he's got success in Chicago. He was a big part of the World Series there. I mean, yeah, the Giants sucked this year, but they're pretty good last year. I mean, 100 and how many wins? I mean, you know.
Let's take it easy with the suck. They're like 500.
Yeah.
This is like, give me these problems.
By the expectations.
That's
right?
fine.
You go by expectations, right?
Fair.
They haven't had the year that they should have had.
Fair.
But last year, 107 wins. The Dodgers have won the division every other year. I think this is a tremendous hire. And I think the best thing about this is that he gave up a really good job to come here. I mean, yes, it's president of baseball operations. He's going to make more money. He's not making that move just because he's going to get paid a little bit more money. He clearly has assurances. He likes some of the things he sees, and he's going to be able to do whatever the hell he wants. I think that Chris Ilitch is out. Like, he's not the president anymore. He's the CEO. Chris Ilitch is going to cut the checks. This guy's going to run the show. He's going to do whatever he wants. And I think that that's the most encouraging thing for Tiger fans. He gave up a really good job in San Francisco to come here. He's not doing that if he doesn't think this can succeed.
I don't know how hands-on Chris Ilitch was to begin with. I mean, the guy was thrilled with the development of the prospects, even though they were literally all disappointing.
He was the president of baseball. He was the president of the organization. And that's the interesting thing, too. By the way, when they fired Dombrowski, the president and GM, they didn't make Al Avila the president and GM. They made him the vice president and GM. So, yeah. This is clearly Chris Ilitch has basically turned the keys over within reason as far as finances to this guy. So go for it.
You snuck in a line there that I don't know if this has been reported or if you're reporting something. I didn't know that. You said a moment ago that it took San Francisco brass by surprise when the Tigers hired him.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about? I haven't.
Well,
heard that.
it didn't. I think it took him a little bit by surprise that he left. They knew that they obviously let him interview or talk to him, but I think it took a lot of people in San Francisco by surprise. It took a lot of people in baseball by surprise. It's the Giants. It's a really good organization. It's the Tigers, a really bad organization right now for the last several years. You're leaving a really good situation for what many in baseball would consider a risk. And this guy talked about calculated risks. When he talked about how he's going to make calculated risks with the roster this offseason right away. He waited and took it. Like, he could have talked to the team and not taken this job and been very comfortable for many years in San Francisco and done a great job. But he's coming here, and I think that the fact that he's took the job is encouraging in itself. Just that he took the job.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think a key thing when you're trying to measure your own objectivity is to look at what people outside of your sphere are saying. And this example of the contrast between the league perception of Al Avila, do you remember the Ken Rosenthal piece that came out this summer about Al Avila? Multiple sources, major league sources saying, we don't think he's clever enough to navigate his way out of this. Clever? I thought that was an interesting term. Basically, Ken Rosenthal, completely responsibly, there was nothing wrong with the article. It was spot on, well reported. Shit on Al Avila through the prism of the entire rest of the league in terms of the executives and this guy's peers. The contrast between that and what we're seeing with the perception of Scott Harris, it is the most cavernous gap imaginable. Ben, can you throw up just a couple? I mean, there were many of these. Let's see what people are saying. Brandon Hyde, Baltimore Orioles manager, quote, I'm a huge Scott Harris fan. He's extremely bright, great with people, an unbelievable listener. He makes very good, thought-out decisions. That is a great hire. So basically the antithesis to Al Avila. What's Mr. Passon say, Ben? Let's see that one. Jeff Passon, top baseball reporter working right now. Quote, Scott Harris's rise in the industry has been meteoric. He is seen as a future front office star. So a couple months ago, we're reading these articles about how Al Avila is essentially too stupid to get his way out of the hole he's dug. I mean, that was a euphemism-laden article that was basically insulting the guy for 575 words. To this, where the top baseball reporter working today on the national level is saying that this guy is a future front office star, the perception of him is glowing, you got managers, we could have pulled 100 quotes. You went from one extreme to the other. I buy this hype. I wanted this guy so much, him or Luna. I was like a 1A, 1B. I was too embarrassed to even publicly say it because I thought it would be like those Tennessee fans that wanted John Gruden every year. I thought it was preposterous to even suggest. I think this is legitimately a A-plus hire, and I think he's going to turn this thing around. And that's me. How many times have you sat with me, and I'm the most negative person on the planet? So, I mean, am I completely gone that this guy has the ceiling, we haven't seen it yet, the ceiling of a top 5 baseball executive? Am I crazy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was getting it done in San Francisco. I mean, yeah, again, not a great year this year, but I mean, he's good.
You're buying in, so
I'm absolutely buying in, and it's not just those two quotes, but I mean, you like you said, you could have pulled another 100.
Oh, we had to limit it. I mean, could have gone the whole hour.
You could have just done a scroll for the whole show. I mean, everyone, and the one thing that Brandon Hyde said that I think that the people I talked to, including I talked to Gabe Kapler the morning of Harris's press conference. Kapler, of course, the Giants manager, and he brought up, and he mentioned it 3 or 4 times to me, the listening. This guy wants opinions, okay? He wants everyone's opinions. Now, he wants the opinions of his trusted advisors, right? Those he will find his trusted advisors eventually. I don't think the front office is going to remain exactly how it is. He's going to hire a GM. I assume that Menzen might be up for that job, and Sartori is probably going to stay. But I think there's going to be some changes in the front office below that. But he listens. He just wants to soak in as much information, and then he'll make his decisions. Where I think that I think that previous administrations here have been, pretty. I'm going to make this. This is what we're going to do. This is the moves I'm going to make, and I don't think there was necessarily the connect from the front office down to the field. You've heard stories over the years of the analytics that they tried to push and give to the field managers, and Jim Leland wasn't a big fan.
Right, the garbage can.
Jim Leland wasn't a big fan. And I think that under Hinch, I think there's been that a lot of that information hasn't been flowing from up top down. I think there's still been a disconnect there. So, look, I think who knows how this is going to work out. Maybe the Tigers are so far gone that it's going to take another 5-10 years. I don't believe that's the case. Who knows, though? We don't know. But I think there's reason. I think that there's reason to be optimistic. If you go hire Burns, all right, that's not a reason to be optimistic, right? I mean,
he's flamed out twice.
But that was the fear because he knows AJ Hinch, right? That was the thing. AJ, it's going to be a guy that AJ knows, and that's why Lunau was like the one off the top of the head. AJ's back in the game. Why isn't Lunau?
Now, Lunau would have been good.
Yeah, I guess he's running.
He's running like a soccer team.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. With
nothing shady about soccer. No. That's totally on the up and up.
No, but yeah, it was. Yeah. But Burns would have been, and everyone was talking about Burns, and Burns would have been But this is honestly, think about how Chris Ilitch was put in touch with Scott Harris. Think about it. Like, I don't think that Chris Ilitch started this search knowing who Scott Harris was.
Well, no, okay. Chris Ilitch doesn't know people that are in his own organization.
But I'm sure that Chris Ilitch knows who Theo Epstein is.
Yeah, but
I think that honestly, that's where it started, and that's great. And anybody from the Theo Epstein tree is going to have credibility. So.
I'm with you on all that, but look at all the quotes we talked about. I think you could have gotten Harris's number without personally reaching out to Epstein. They actually made a play to get Epstein, which I know is a theory.
You have to call him. You have to. If you're Chris Ilitch, you have to call Theo Epstein because you know that you need to please the Tiger fan. You need to hit a home run with this hire. And Theo Epstein is the name that everyone comes to mind when any free agent or any front office opening. So you have to make that call.
Okay, but you also had to fire Al Avila every year for the last 3 years and didn't. You also had to sign Justin Verlander because it was the most obvious home run signing ever, and they didn't do that. I'm not giving Chris Ilitch any benefit of the doubt leading up to this hire. He's starting to buy a little credibility now. I was talking to my dear friend and a mutual friend of ours, Chris Castellani, about this, and I want to give him credit because this was his idea or his thought, not mine, but I thought it was interesting. And I'm paraphrasing Chris, but he suggested that this may have been Chris Ilitch's Mike Ilitch moment, where Mike Ilitch, people forget, if you're younger, quite a bit younger than me, certainly younger than you, Mike Ilitch was considered cheap. I mean, Greg Henson had, the Pizza Man song parodies.
Terrible.
This whole Mike Ilitch is spending like crazy thing that if you're 24, that's what you think. That was not Mike Ilitch. He was considered, I would say, arguably more reviled from the baseball side, not hockey, than his son was. And then it flipped. He got so embarrassed, was the theory, by 2003, and then signs Pudge with his lumbar spine issues, and it worked out.
Not necessarily. He got a stadium.
Okay.
And he basically,
the Juan Gonzalez.
He basically kind of, in a way, held the city hostage for a stadium. He wanted that new shiny object, suites and the revenue producing, and then showed some signs of success. So that's where I think it.
Yeah. Their payroll was low in 2002.
No, it was low, but they offered Juan Gonzalez how much money? I mean, they were making a play
for 8 years. Which back then, it'd be like $500 million.
He didn't sign because it's a horseshit ballpark. So.
Yeah, well, he's a horseshit businessman. Because,
by the way, they might finally be in the fences.
He signed 1 year with Cleveland after that for like 12 or 14 or
had
something.
A great year.
Oh yeah, he was awesome.
Great year.
He only had one more good year. Yeah. Then he went to the Royals.
Yeah.
He went back to the Rangers. What an idiot. Him and his 9 wives.
Imagine if he would have signed.
The Joseph Smith of baseball. Multiple wives. Who knows if those divorces were even finalized before he was on to the next one. I digress.
Right. But when he got the stadium was when he wanted that stadium. I think he kind of he wasn't gonna, he basically demanded that.
Well, yeah, John McHale's bow tie did a great job. I think Comerica Park's underrated.
It's very underrated.
But whatever you think of, stadium, whatever.
But
for some reason
for a long time.
He had the moment.
Yeah.
Whatever you attribute it to. Is this Chris Ilitch's moment? Because you could argue the AJ Hinch hiring was the Mike Ilitch moment. And we all saw how that worked out.
Mm-hmm.
They went the cheapest, best option in free agency. They had no interest in Verlander at the price, even though he was obviously, in my opinion, worth it. I've been fooled once, is what I'm telling you. Is this, in your mind, the Mike Ilitch moment for the Sun Chris? Is this a new owner going forward?
Well, I think that the Hinch. I think his first big moment was Hinch. I don't think you can undervalue that, and I think that that's going to, if this is going to succeed, it's going to succeed with AJ Hinch. So that was a big one, and that took some guts. I mean, not from my perspective. I mean, I would have hired him in a second, but the perception from a lot of people is you're hiring a guy who got suspended for a year, and that was the first call that they made, and so that was a big one. But this is big, and I think that because this goes so against what this team has had. I mean, baseball front office has become a young man's business in a lot of ways, and you don't need to sit around for 25 years to get your shot. And they went and got the rising star in the game to leave a really good situation in San Francisco. Yeah, it's a fantastic hire. If we give Scott Harris the keys and says, "Here you go, it's yours," which I assume that Scott Harris wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. I think this could work out, and I think it could work out in relatively short order, depending on the changes he made. Which, if you listen to the press conference, he didn't use the word rebuild, he didn't use the word patience, didn't give any timetables, but he made it pretty clear that the moves are going to start really quick on the roster and this offseason. And I like that he said calculated risk. I mean, they're going to, you could see some trades that are going to maybe surprise you, and I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see how quickly he tears this thing down.
This thing has been dead for so long. The Jeff Passan tweet announcing the hiring of Scott Harris, I mean, that blindsided me like an orgasmic 2x4. I had no idea that was even a possibility. It was not even a fringe theory of it being real. It happens. I'm doing cartwheels right past the streets of Lafayette, and all the rats that I are dancing in the alley. The press conference, I was already amped. Mm-hmm. I was already excited. I was already ecstatic. I could not believe what they had. The press conference ramped it up even
phenomenal.
more.
It was
Ben, play phenomenal. Sorry to cut you off, but just give me a snippet, and then I want to get your read on this. Ben, can we throw up that press conference video?
We need to acquire, develop, and retain young players. It's not a unique strategy. Most organizations in baseball are trying to do that, but it's exceptionally important for us, and we need to absolutely lean into that over the next few years. The second thing is the best organizations in baseball right now are not only acquiring that talent, they're getting the absolute most out of that talent when they get into the organization.
How excited would we be if...
Yeah. So, I mean, you get a dose there. I mean, beside the fact that, like, I don't know how we're going to have him and Evan Petzold in the same room for the next, 10 years. There's just too much attractiveness in one spot. But that aside, I mean, how polished. He said everything you want to hear from a baseball executive if you are a forward-thinking baseball guy, right? I mean, that was a home run press conference for whatever that's worth, maybe nothing.
Yeah. I mean, you can't put much stock in it because we've seen, there's been a lot of home run press conferences over the years, Jim Schwartz, Bergie Hoke, you name it. There's been great press conferences that people rave about that. So you can't take much from it, but the way he broke things down and explained things on his philosophies, I mean, it was almost like he was selling himself to the fans in a lot of ways. And I think maybe he thought he needed to do that because, I don't think that the casual baseball fan knew who Scott Harris was. So it was exceptionally well done. And the fact that he made it clear that things are going to change in a hurry. Now, I don't know what that means. I mean, you look at the roster, they've got some issues on who they get rid of and whatnot and how they get this young talent that he wants. But you could tell that they're going to be, I think they're going to be a better drafting team, and I think they're going to be a better trading team. And that was the thing. Like, Avila got, and that was what sunk Avila is. He got nothing for the rebuild. I mean, when you started to rebuild, you got nothing in return. And some people defend Avila and say, well, the market was different when he was making those trades. I don't buy that. I don't buy that you can't get anything for Justin Verlander. I don't buy that you can't get anything for JD Martinez. This is top 5 pitchers and hitters in baseball at that time, and you couldn't get anything for them. So I'm not one of those people that defends on that. I think that that's where things sunk, and I think that this guy's going to be more aggressive than Avila was. I think that Avila was a little timid when he finally got to run the show, and it bit him. And I think that this guy's going to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think, honestly, if he's given a little bit of money and can make some trades, he's going to make the trades. He's going to, I think there's going to be some people maybe were just released, and he's given a little bit of money. That I think this thing could turn around in a hurry, relatively speaking, next year or two.
They have that potential, certainly with proper leadership. I mean, someone, I don't know if it was the Free Press, maybe it had been you with the news, somebody wrote an article like a year or two ago, like every single Al Avila trade other than the very minor cash considerations for a single A guy. That was you.
It included every one of those minor transactions.
Did it? I
went through the whole. Maybe it was. I went through the whole every move he ever.
I love that it was you. So I don't remember the exact conclusion, but I remember it was like loss, push maybe, loss.
It was bad.
Like there wasn't a single he smoked his opposing GM on that one. Like Dombrowski had those every time he woke up. It's just the contrast. I don't even need him to be just destroying his competition on every trade like Dombrowski. It'd be nice, but whatever. But it's been so bad. Yeah. I love what they have in place here. And look, I have been called by your colleague, Justin Rod, the king of hyperbole, in both directions, too positive, too negative. He thinks I'm always too hyperbolic. I made the argument about a week or so ago that if you have an A-plus baseball executive, GM, president, whoever your top guy is, that is worth at least as much as multiple marquee free agents. The example would be if the Tigers, let's say they were both free agents next year, signed Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, and how excited we would be. We had this discussion on Twitter Spaces, myself, Chris Castellani, Adam Baydoun, great guy, and Anthony Broom. I'm going to play, this is a rare time where I'm going to quote myself, but I want to just play this little clip for you.
You're like Dorn in Major League. You're activating yourself.
I'm activating myself for 30 seconds.
For a Roger Dorn day?
But this is the discussion we were having. I want you to listen to this and tell me if I am doing the Justin Rogers King of Hyperbole routine. Let's run that.
How excited would we be if Ohtani and Trout were both free agents, or Ohtani and pick your guy were both free agents, and we signed both of them in the same day? We would be bouncing off the walls with excitement, but we all just agreed that a really, really good president of baseball ops is more important than if that happened. Now, We don't know for a fact that Harris is that, but there is very good reason to believe that that's the ceiling, and that is why I'm ecstatic.
Off the reservation or somewhat accurate. That is the type of impact we're talking about if he is as good as we think he can be.
No, that's, of course, a baseball executive is huge. I mean, you just need to look at the Tampa Bay rate. How do they compete every single year with nothing? The Oakland A's over the years. I mean, they're doing it because they have very smart people who see value in people that other people don't, and so they're finding bargains. So no, that's huge. That's absolutely massive. I think they say a manager could be worth, a good manager could be worth 4 or 5 wins a year. I think an executive would probably trump that. I mean, obviously.
It's your whole win-loss record. Yeah. They built the team.
Yeah, and it's just finding value in baseball is the hardest sport. Hockey may be number 2, but I think baseball is the hardest sport in identifying and projecting major league talent. You see it. You see like Aaron Judge hit his 61st home run yesterday. Are you looking? He's 32nd pick. You got 30 teams or 29 teams that passed on it. The guy's a stud, including the Yankees, by the way. They actually drafted a guy before him.
Yep.
So they even passed on Aaron Judge. So it's just I mean, you look at Mike Piazza. What was he?
He's like 43rd round.
I mean, and he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's what you need to do. I mean, it's just a hard sport to identify talent, and the Tigers have lacked identifying talent for several years now, and it's shown. It's been brutal.
I mean,
By the way, I just want to go back to that Avila piece. That was last year I did that piece. Shook me a long time. But I actually met with him. I gave him a chance to tell me about all these moves. We sat down for like an hour and a half.
Oh, I didn't know this part.
He tried, and he would explain, he admitted some shit. But again, he goes back to the market wasn't there for this guy, that guy, and I just don't buy that. I don't.
He's the only one. Everybody made bad trades during his entire 5-year tenure. You laid out an entire article. That pisses me off. Don't get me going on Al Avila again. That's what he said.
By the way, because he's explained this in public. He said that about JD and Justin and whatever.
Get the hell out of here, Al.
They're top 5 players at the time that you dealt them, and I don't care if they're free agents in 2 months. You still, you have to. If you're going to rebuild, and you've got all these great pieces to rebuild with, to trade away, you got to do better. And who did they get? Who did they get?
Smaller moves. Like
they got the best move he made was trading his own son for Candelario.
But even the Yankees with like Matt Carpenter, who they resuscitated him. Now he got hurt and stuff. He was carrying them for 2 months. This is insane. So if your argument is, the market was bad, that's why all my trades are bad. Why are other GMs making good trades in this perilous market? Like, shut up, Al. Sorry, I feel like I spoke over you, but you sat with Al about that article.
I wanted to give him a chance because I was coming out with this article and it was going to be on the front page, and basically the moral or the thesis or the conclusion was you're out of time. Like, here's why. Here's all these moves. I went through every move. I went through every small move, every people that you can't remember that ever played baseball. I mean, I went through every move, and I didn't want to publish the article without at least giving, it was analysis, so it was my take, but I didn't want to publish it without giving him a chance to respond. And so we sat down, and I asked him about all the moves, and he explained certain things with this move, that move, and it's something he admitted were shit, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to give him a chance to speak.
I can't imagine being in like the cone of focus as a writer for that piece. Like, I can just picture you having like soft cello music played in the background, like this melancholy. The fact that you even did that, because I remember the article, I forgot that you had written it, but I don't want Al. The fact that he's defending it based on market.
He's done that in public, though. I mean, he said that. I'm not saying.
Yeah, but not in the context of, hey, why does everything you touch turn to shit? That's a little bit different. Someone asking him about JD, hey, what happened there, Verlander? That's like, okay, sort of a la carte. For him to have that entire sort of encompassing take on his legacy is just, that's delusional.
Like I said, he there were certain moves that he said that, that he defended, and certain moves there were other moves he didn't.
Do you think he goes to bed like knowing that he's bad? Like, it was bad at his job, I mean?
I think he's probably definitely taken a hit, and I'm sure it doesn't sit well with him. I mean, and this guy was well respected in baseball for a long, long time. You talk about the article Ken Rosenthal wrote, which was great. Rosenthal, Jeff Passan, the best. I still think Rosenthal's the best. But
Rosenthal blocked me on Twitter, so he got downgraded.
He's so good though, and but they both are. But anyway, you talk, that article where people are questioning Al Avila. I mean, he was Dombrowski's right hand man, and he had a lot of respect in baseball. And it's just his legacy is what it is. It's bad. It's a bad era of Tiger baseball.
I mean, you attribute so much of those Dombrowski moves to Al Avila. It's getting hard to believe that the second Dombrowski leaves, you went from a 94% hit rate on your trades to practically zero.
Look,
did he forget how to make transactions? I
think it's, I don't know. When you're the guy in the chair, maybe it's just different. But he wasn't aggressive like Dombrowski was, and that was a big difference. And that's what I really like about Scott Harris coming in. He's not saying we're going to methodically work this thing. We're going to go piece by piece. And no, he's like, we're going to take risks. And I think that's big, and I think you have to take risks. you take risks, and some work, some don't. But the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward.
You think Scott Harris makes a trade for Jonathan Papelbon when he was a top 5 relief pitcher on the market or on the planet, and he was on the market, and your bullpen sucked, and the Tigers didn't make a bid even though you could have had him for almost nothing? I think Scott Harris makes that trade. I think Scott Harris probably makes an Andrew Miller trade. We've already talked about that.
Miller trade that should have absolutely happened.
Yeah, what are you doing? Like the fact that the Tigers had the best rotation, the best lineup, and like just decided to go at it with a shitty bullpen.
2013 was the best team they had. You can't convince me. I mean, they made the World Series in 6. They made the World Series in 12. 13 was the best team they had by far.
Yeah, not even close.
Yeah, no.
The David Ortiz thing was. Yeah, I mean, I still just remember before that fateful pitch, just give him nothing to hit. I'll go get Mike Napoli. Like, fucking walk him. I don't care. Like, I'll take the bases loaded. We're up by 3 runs, and it's Napoli. Hey, you're not going to let this fucking guy, the best clutch hitter of arguably all time, certainly this generation, beat you on one swing. He throws a fucking meatball right over it. God almighty. Okay, so
it wasn't a good pitch. I'll go to war with Benoit over Phil Coke, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, how about...
A lot of people, remember how angry they were that we didn't pitch Phil Coke?
Well,
are you kidding me?
What about when Drew Smiley had Jacoby Ellsbury down 1-2 in the count and then walked him on the next 3 pitches to get that inning go? It's like, thanks, Drew. Like that, like 1-2 count. It's one thing if you're fouling off a bunch of pitches.
Just win game 2, man. Win game 2, and I think it's all yours.
And do you realize how big that 4-run lead felt when the Red Sox had like 2 hits in 17 innings?
Yeah, I know. There was like a no-hitter through 6. There's no-hitter watch every night.
I do take the blame for that loss, actually, because my buddy James and I were at the team hotel in Boston buying Benoit and Anibal Sanchez drinks at the bar. And I mean, Sanchez obviously had pitched fantastic in game 1, but we were buying Johnny Walker's for Joaquin Benoit the night before he gave up the worst home run ever.
Oh, shit, man. I didn't know that. It's all your freaking fault, man.
Blood on my hands, actually.
You ruined an era of Tiger baseball.
Yeah, I did. That was my bad, actually. So, anyway, looking ahead to 2023, enthusiasm aside, because I said we were fooled on A.J. Hinch, or at least I was. Not that he's bad, but I mean, fooled on what it meant and what the win-loss total would be with him here. I am curious for your perception on 2023. Now, we know this is a rebuild on top of a rebuild, but what does next year look like? Because I think you're putting on way too much pressure for Scott Harris to say, oh, this team's going to win 92 games.
No, I don't think so.
What is sort of a reasonable look ahead to 2023, not just in terms of record, but like how do you see him trying to reshape this roster just in year 1?
Well, he's got some big decisions to make. I mean, if you look at the offense was atrocious this year. I mean, you look across the entire diamond, and who is a cornerstone that you want to keep? Not a ton of them. I mean, Riley Green. You get Austin Meadows back. I think that'll be good. I mean, I don't think he's terrible. I think Torkelson will be fine. But then you got, what's Candelario? What's Baez? Scope. Why is he on the team? I mean, he's had a great year defensively. That's fine. But you didn't sign him to be a defensive, wizard. So he's got some decisions to make on some of the veterans. And, there's a free agency, and we'll see. I think they're going to spend a little bit this offseason. They spent $250 million last offseason. I don't think they're going to do that this year. Go get Ohtani. Why not? Give him the team. Give him the minor leagues.
Ben,
take the minor leagues and just
throw
get
it up.
Ohtani.
Ben, let's manifest it right now. You know what I'm talking about, Ben. Throw up the picture if you can. Let's manifest it. There it is. Let's put it into the universe. Let's be those crazy people that thought the Tigers were going to sign Mike Mussina in 2000 when the Yankees paid $200 million more than we would have. Aaron Judge, something like that. Now, that's insane.
That's $500 million.
That's insane.
That's a lot.
That's fine. But I'm just saying, look, you know what? Even after it happened, everyone said, oh, Prince Fielder thinks insane. Even after it happened, Pudge Rodriguez, he's never go there. We couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a whole other stratosphere. Right. I admit that.
Right.
Take a step down from that, whatever. I mean, name your pick. Is it even somewhat plausible? I won't even hold you to a name. Pick a trade, pick a free agent, whatever. Is it somewhat plausible that this offseason, in the spirit of I'm having my Mike Ilitch moment for Chris Ilitch, that we see something even close to that Aaron Judge thing where we're like, holy fucking shit? Or is this going to be more kind of linear and slow build. What do you see there?
I think it's possible.
It's in play.
I think it's in play. I think that the money's there. I mean, again, this team's still in pretty good financial shape as far as payroll. I mean, they're only 18th. I don't think this team will ever be a top 5 payroll again. Not while Chris Ilitch is the owner. But I think they can get to 10th and 9th or 10th.
I think.
Exactly. And they're 18th after spending $250 million. So there's clearly some money still there. I think that it's there. And so, yeah, I think that there's a possibility. Now it's just going to matter if, the players on the market this offseason are guys that fit with Scott Harris's, or if he thinks that it's best to, make some more shrewd moves this offseason and make the big ones next. It's going to depend on the players available, but man, imagine how this town would go crazy. You got the Angels are selling.
Yeah.
So they would like to get their books, a little bit, and what they could get for Ohtani. They've had Ohtani and Trout and haven't done anything with them. Waste. I mean, that would be fun.
They have Mickey
fix
Mantle
two problems.
in center
You fix your offense and your pitching staff in one. I mean, that'd be fascinating.
You think they're going to go for both of them? Who are you going to have left? What's Ohtani have? Because Trout's got like 8 years left. What's Ohtani have? Like 2 years left?
Yeah.
He's not a free agent yet, but he's not like 5 years away.
No, but it's like, and he's not overly paid, compared to what he could be making. And I think that, there's rumblings that they'll listen. I saw a list the other day. Somebody put out teams that would be in play for him. Tigers weren't on the list, but who knows if the Tigers have what the Angels would want to get them. Maybe they don't.
What about Verlander?
Yeah.
If Verlander's opting out, that's a given. I think
he's out. Well, yeah, for sure. But I don't know, man. I think he likes it in Houston, and I think that the Tigers missed their window with that. I think that they didn't make a call, and I told you, and I'll stand by this. I mean, I was told the day they traded Justin Verlander by a Tigers person that they wanted to bring him back. 2022 was the target year, and he got Tommy John, and they freaked out. That totally, ended those plans. They didn't even call. Look at this guy, man. He's a freak. And we went over this last time I was here.
Yeah.
He is a freak. Would you be interested in signing any good pitcher that's had Tommy John? Maybe not. Justin Verlander is a physical freak.
You and I laid it out with the Tommy John guys at past 35. We said the only one to do it was R.A. Dickey, who was throwing junk knuckleballs. Mm-hmm. And even with that knowledge, you and I said, it's on tape. You and I were both like, I don't give a shit. That guy's going to be great. Mm-hmm. Pull the tape from the last 40 balls.
He's Nolan Ryan. I mean, he's a physical freak. He's probably going to be doing this. He's Tom Brady. He's going to be doing this for another 3, 4, 5 years.
See, you said they didn't call.
Verlander said they didn't call. Verlander said they didn't call.
They didn't call, but they had a back channel inquiry. And we can talk a little bit more about this off the air, but they weren't interested in the number. Chris Ilitch said the exact quote was, I'm not in the business of paying 39-year-old pitchers off surgery that kind of money. That was what he was telling his little inner circle. So good call on that one, because look at what he's done this year. I think he'll probably be great next year too. That guy's going to go. You said Tom Brady. He seems like that. He'll be 43 and still good. There's no sign of slowing up.
Earlier you talked about how hands-on was Chris Ilitch. And if that's correct, then that's pretty hands-on. And now I think he's getting rid of that altogether. I think he's turning this over, and I think that's obviously a very good thing. Chris Ilitch is not a baseball expert. And the fact that he's turning this completely over, and I truly believe that. I think anything is possible. Now, the question is, do they have the resources and the people that would, to make these trades? I'm not sure they have that. Maybe they do, but they have the money to spend more money. I mean, you're still only 18th in payroll.
The free agent class is pretty sexy.
Not bad. You're not getting Aaron. I don't think you're getting Aaron.
Well, you know what? The Aaron Judge contract, wherever he lands, is probably going to be a complete.
Oh, it's not going to be good. $500 million. It's not going to be good.
He'll be great for like 3 or 4 years, and then you're going to have like a 6'8" outfielder making $45 million a year.
The Tigers are thinking of moving the fences in. So who knows? Maybe they're doing this to attract somebody. Seems like it's happening.
Here's the argument why it's not complete insanity. Just from a number standpoint, forget the optics or the names. Just let's do math. Cabrera is what, 32 million?
32 million.
Falls off after this year.
Yeah.
you could pay Aaron Judge $42 million a year, which is for 1 year, you're high, but after one more year, your team payroll is only $10 million higher. That's paying him 42. That's other than Scherzer, nobody makes that. I think that'd be the number one position player salary. $42 million a year, 10-year deal, blow it out. You're only $10 million higher than you are right now with Cabrera by year 2. And if payrolls just let's say they stay stagnant, that'd be like the 15th highest payroll. So you could literally sign Aaron Judge to a highest paid, more than Trout position paid player in the sport, and still have a league average payroll. That's a mathematical fact. Is that not somewhat a fair argument for whether it's Judge or trade, like a sign and trade for Ohtani? You trade for him, but you do a 7-year extension on condition. There's some argument where they could blow somebody out. $45 million, $13 million more. Okay, you have the 14th highest payroll. I mean, come on, am I crazy? They could do it if they wanted.
Sure, they could do it. Sure, they could do it.
Could, but not. It's not out of the realm of mathematical. Financial possibility.
It's not. And again, I believe that Scott Harris took this job with the assurances that he will have the resources to make this team a winner, and that's not just trading and being great at drafting and great at finding talent, but also spending money. So yeah, could they? Sure, But what we don't know is if that's Scott Harris's MO, if he's a guy that prefers to not tie up that much in one player and spread it around and maybe find the bargains and the value, I guess, that we don't see necessarily because we're not baseball experts.
I'm fine with that because you got somebody actually intelligent shopping for the groceries. So if he wants to go sign 3 guys at an average of 14, I'm cool with him doing it.
Right. Like Mike Pelfrey's probably not going to be one of them. So,
you rattled off those names, Zimmerman, Pelfrey, Lowe. By the way, check my Twitter receipt. I was destroying those signings in real time, especially Pelfrey and Lowe.
Remember how good Zimmerman was that first month?
April,
he was
AL pitcher of the month.
So good.
And
then nothing.
And the one person in media that really, we were tepid maybe across. No one was like doing cartwheels.
No.
But the one person
because
in the
they replaced
media,
Scherzer. No one was
it's all relative. And that was the Sergei Fedorov baseball version for Mike Ilitch, where it's like, oh, I was disrespected.
You pissed me off.
Yeah, Goodbye. Even though you had a number that was within your budget that they're ready to sign right now, but you felt disrespected, so go take a hike. I think Scherzer won that.
By the way, I hate to cut you off, but what if the Tigers never rebuilt? What if they kept J.D. Martinez? What if they kept Justin Verlander? What if they kept Max Scherzer? The rebuild, and these guys are out there shoving it down people's throats still, what if they never rebuilt? And everyone was like, oh, they got to rebuild. And they probably did. But what if they never rebuilt? I'd be fascinated to see where this team would be.
It was fun watching all those guys get rings elsewhere the second they left. Like Kinsler won, JD, Verlander, Scherzer.
Porcello won a Cy Young.
Porcello wins the Cy Young, which is still, he deserved it that year. Every other year.
What did he beat Verlander? He beat Verlander for that, didn't he?
He's out of baseball 2 years later. So that's one of those weird kind of magical years. And they gave him a lot of run support, so he won 19 games, which stressed up the numbers even more. But whatever. Yeah. I am optimistic. And whether it is in the form of Aaron Judge, which is probably insane, but we've been shocked before, or 3 sort of moderate pieces. I like the guy who's shopping for the groceries now. I'm just saying, again, cast the Aaron Judge name out of it. That type of stratosphere where you are signing a top 5, top 7, whatever player in baseball. You could have a guy that's like a Soto, 2 years away from free agency, that thought that he's rejecting offers from his incumbent team, and they trade him because they're not going to pay up. Maybe like we saw with Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
In 08, like do something like that. It doesn't have to be a free agent, but that type of commitment, you can make that today. And by year 2, just 365 and some change days from right now, you would still have like the 15th highest payroll, 14th, 15th. But that's not insane.
No.
It could happen if they wanted it.
No, I think it could. Again, it's just a matter of his philosophy and if that's the way he wants to go. But absolutely, they have the resources to do it. They're getting more TV money. They're not hurting. Okay, so yeah, they could absolutely do it. And again, he's here because he's been told this is your ship, and Ilitch is passing it off. And I think what's going to be fun is that it's going to be an active offseason. And there will be surprises. And I think that that's kind of interesting. Go get Carlos Correa. Move Baez to second base. You wanted Carlos Correa last year. Carlos Correa's opting out. He's had a huge last month and a half. He's leaving the Twins. Go get him. He's another guy you could get. So
elite defensive shortstop too, which nobody talks about. Mm-hmm. Guys argue, well, no. He's a top 5 defensive shortstop too. Mm-hmm. So I love Correa just for that aspect alone. I just think come opening day, I'm going to trust the process anyway because I love the GM. I'm back in. I just want to have something where we're actually excited. Mm-hmm. Whatever form it takes. 3 or 4 moderate signings. I wanted Kyle Schwarber last year. Whatever. I just want to have some real juice on the field again, not just in the front office. But big picture, this was a home run. I am on board with all 4 GMs in this town, which is what the fuck?
It's pretty crazy how the town. There's nothing, no playoffs, nothing for all this long time, and yet everyone's so stoked about who's in place.
All 4 GMs.
I think it's fascinating.
Coaches more hit or miss, but GMs.
Well, people say too, Chris Ilitch. He signed another good GM. Well, he had to. He had to do Yzerman. He had to do Yzerman.
He gets no credit for Yzerman.
No, Yzerman had to happen.
Yeah.
So this one, I think, caught me by surprise and in a pleasant way for Tiger fans. I think that it's going to be interesting what the product they put on the field to start next year. I think 2024 is a good chance. I think they get, again, you listen to him. Didn't use the word rebuild. Didn't use the word patience. He wants to win now, and I think when you get a guy who's this intelligent and can move the chess pieces and get the new pieces, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be. I don't know that we'll recognize the opening day lineup next year.
I'm hoping.
The question
so,
is,
the
one question is the Cabrera conundrum. I don't know how he's going to handle that.
That's where I was going to finish.
That's a hard thing.
Because that's okay. We don't know.
Right.
There's no way to know.
Right.
But if you're Scott Harris, don't you find yourself in this balancing act? And by the way, anything else, Chris Ilitch may be hands off. Casting Cabrera out in any form, that's an ownership level.
He will have to. Yeah, he would have to sign off.
Yeah, right. That's the one roster exception. I believe you that he has carte blanche, except for that. That is an ownership level decision. If you're Scott Harris, and you're just an analytical, smart guy. I'm sure he's a decent guy, and he understands the human element of this. You gotta have him coming off the bench or not on the roster.
If Miguel Cabrera wants to be on the roster next year, Miguel Cabrera will be on the roster.
I agree.
Now we don't know. If Miguel wants to, there were mixed reports. Back-to-back days. One day he's thinking about retiring, and the next day
he's not walking.
The next day he pulls McCoskey. Clearly, Miguel's agent called him. And next day he pulls McCoskey aside and says, "Oh, I'm not retiring." So I think, if he wants to be here, look, he's a legacy guy. There are going to be Miguel Cabrera jerseys in the stands of Comerica Park or whatever their next ballpark is, long after we're gone. What he did for this organization, he has to. I think he would at this point. I think he'd accept coming off the bench and starting every 2 or 3 days at DH or whatnot. I think he kind of accepted his role. He always wanted to play first base. He never wanted to DH, and he kind of accepted. And he got all these days off down the stretch. He's kind of accepted where he is. So if he's got to be there, and if he wants to be back. So he was asked about it. What do you do with Miguel Cabrera? And he's like, "Well, I'd have to sit down and talk with Miguel. I just don't. Miguel wants to be back. He's gonna be back. It's gonna be now." Miguel's not going to do it for a farewell tour. It's not him. He's not a big guy in the public spotlight. Like David Ortiz wanted to get all these, free gifts of every
Derek Jeter.
Yeah. Miguel doesn't want that. So he doesn't need a farewell tour. And who knows? He might just, he might wake up in December and feel like his body's shot. We don't know. But if he wants to play, he's going to play.
Well, then
and that's fine.
It's 1 year. Pull a hamstring. You got to take the $32 million. Yeah. I know it's tempting to go spend time with your 3 families.
Well, unless the Tigers, unless he came to them and said, look, my body's shot. I think it might be it, but maybe I'll give it another shot. If the Tigers said, here's your money, because if he retires, he doesn't get the money. If he plays and he's injured or whatever, he gets the money.
Right.
If the Tigers could easily say, and would be well within their right, if he's feeling hurt or whatever, or what to say, because that's why his tune changed. On back-to-back days in the clubhouse, I'm thinking, I might not play next year. Oh, wait, I am. Obviously, the agent's like, that's 10% commission. Like, that's, you know, like, don't say that, you know. If he were to come to them and say, I don't think I got it anymore, the Tigers would be well within their right and to just give him the money and say, you know, if you want to be an ambassador for us, you know, and come around whenever you want and you can have whatever role, you know, come around. If your body's shot, here's the money.
He's getting that money 100%.
Exactly.
There's no, whatever form it comes, I have no problem if Cabrera wants to be the 26th man and play a couple times a week. Because what's the win-loss difference between a guy with like a handful of at-bats every week? It's just, it's a negligible difference. I don't want to see him batting in the heart of the order every day that he's upright. No. You can't do it.
No,
because it sacrifices credibility for everything else you're doing.
It's not, you know, you're not that guy. And by the way, Albert Pujols wasn't that guy when he signed with the Cardinals this year. He
sued a radio guy 10 years ago for making a comment, so I'm going to tread carefully. But what's going on there?
I mean, you know, I'm
just asking questions.
They test all the time. I don't think anything's going on. I think he's caught absolute holy hell.
He hasn't been this good since 2012. That's a fact.
He's amazing.
That's 10 years ago.
It's amazing. It's what he's done is amazing. My point is he wasn't that, you know, he wasn't an everyday player when he signed with the Cardinals. They saw him as the role that Cabrera would probably be next year with the Tigers, you know, playing a couple of times a week or whatever. You know, and he worked his way into it, but Miguel wants to be back. You know, I don't think he hurts the team. You know, I was surprised that, you know, Scott Harris didn't just say right on the spot, Miguel wants to be back. Miguel's back. You know, because I think that, again, that is an Ilitch thing, and you can't cut the guy. People in this town want you to cut him.
So now that you mentioned the Pujols thing, totally unrelated. I had an entire segment planned on Victor Conte. You want to do that next? I'm kidding. Do you not know who Victor Conte is? Right over your head, you're a baseball guy. I can't say it because then I am going to get sued. Pujols sues radio hosts. If he finds out that I mentioned him and Victor Conte in the same sentence, I'm going to be in trouble. Okay, Ben. I think we're good on the Tigers, right? Can I do our little round the globe thing and get you home? Yeah. Because you go to bed at like 8:15. This is late for you.
Well, that's because I golf in the morning, so I have to get up early.
I don't have these golf in the morning problems. Ben, let's run our first speed round since the relaunch. Let's do it. Okay, this is going to take me a minute to get over the fact that my favorite baseball writer does not know who Victor Conte is. But that aside, let's get to the speed round. You remember these rules.
I do, yeah.
You've done this whole thing.
Yeah. Wait, there are rules?
Very loose. Justin Rogers, the speed round is always longer than the body of the show. Big in the news lately in my atmosphere, Mel Tucker. Mm-hmm. The shine for a lot of people is off. I am not moved. I'm still a fan. I'm not really all that rattled. Maybe I'm delusional. What's your stance on Mel Tucker right now? Are you buying that he's on the ropes a little bit in terms of his reputation? Are you not bothered by what you've seen so far? What's your read on Mel Tucker?
From my perspective, I don't think anything's really changed. He got a lot of money. Okay, great. You know, everyone's going to talk about every loss. They're going to bring up the $10 million contract, whatever. You know, look, Michigan State made a choice. You know, you pay him. Is he worth $9 million, $10 million? No. Is there any coach that is? Probably not. You know, maybe Nick Saban. You know, but they made a choice, which is, you know, they were bold. They gave him the money, which is something that in the late 90s they didn't do. They let Nick Saban walk over less money than it took to keep Mel Tucker, and it led to the Bobby Williams, John L. Smith era. Michigan State decided we don't want to have all this transition in a third year, and, you know, for the third time in 3 years, and so they gave him the money. You know, but this is year 3, basically year 2. If you don't, I mean, the COVID year. If you look at, you know, Mark D'Antonio had a really good second year. I think it was 9-3, 9-4, maybe with a bowl game loss, and everyone was really excited. And next year was like 6-7 or 7-6 or whatever it was. And then the next year was boom, the 4th year. So no, it's early now. The defense is tough to watch, and I'm glad that I'm not a Michigan State beat writer who has to watch all these games, because I have admittedly cashed in early on the last 2 games. It's brutal. It's tough to watch, but come on. I mean, it's just, if you're gonna bring up the money every time, I just think that's dumb. That's what bugs me the most. Is like people bring up the contract. You know, it is what it is. It's not your money. You know, it's not even the state taxpayers' money. Like, you know, so who cares? They made a choice. They've identified this guy as their guy, and so they made a choice and gave him money. He's not gonna go undefeated. He's gonna have bad losses. By the way, when they lose, they lose.
They've lost every game he's lost has been by double digits.
Yeah, so. They don't leave any. D'Antonio was like the cardiac kid, you know, with the close wins, all those close wins that they had.
What's the heartbreaking Mel Tucker loss? Like you're usually like out mowing your lawn by the third quarter.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like I think I turned on Pitt and Western one time, and Eastern and Arizona State another.
You're either leaving happy or you left with like an hour more free time.
Exactly.
Than you thought. So
it's so early. It's so early, and if you think about again, the COVID year matters. I mean, it's not an excuse. I mean, that was a tough time, and so this is his third year. I'll call it his second real year. And if you look at D'Antonio, I mean, there was the pick up and then the drop and then the ascension. And I think that this guy recruiting wise, this guy has shown that he's going to get the pieces. So I think next year could be a good year.
I mean, yeah,
this year could fall apart real fast.
D'Antonio did win a Big Ten. They had a really good team before this, but that peak of the program didn't really hit until
it was like 6 or 7 years in.
It was 13, so 6 years because 2007 was year one. And that's when they had they finished top 6 in the country for 3 straight years. Like that was year 6, year 6, 7, and 8. Right. So they had a share of the Big Ten. They had a good year, but it was like a 9-win solid team. Mm-hmm. They weren't really scaring anybody. They were rolling top 6, 3 straight years. Year 6, 7, and 8. So I'm with you. I'm not.
No, it's too early. It's too early.
So we talked about Dave Dombrowski. That's going to be our next one here. Now we already talked about Dave more than I had anticipated. So we'll go real fast here. My legacy is for him A-. Wish he had gotten a bullpen arm or 2 when they could have. I think it would have made all the difference. What's sort of your 2 to 3 sentence read on the Dombrowski era here in particular? Failure, success.
I mean, the best sustained stretch of good Tigers baseball ever.
Yeah,
if you look at it,
that's a fact.
They didn't win a World Series. It sucked, And by the way, it's also I mean, it's not making excuses. It's hard to win a World Series. Okay, I mean, you have to go through several rounds to win a World Series. It's hard. But you look at it, 2006, 2014, what a time to be alive and be a Tiger fan. I mean, every night that ballpark was insane for basically the better part of 8-9 years, and he did that. He took a team, that hadn't had a winning season since the 80s
and the 90s.
Yeah,
they had won like 81 and 81.
They had like 1 year in the 90s where they were like contending for a wild card, and I think they traded away David Wells to the Reds, and then it was bad, and that was it. But that was like they had nothing, and they were bad for so. I mean, there was a whole group, almost a generation of Tiger fans that didn't know anything about baseball, of good baseball in this town, and then you had a whole generation that was given this. I mean, they
were bad my whole life until I was 19.
He didn't get it done, didn't win the World Series, and that'll be a regret. But it wasn't without trying, and it wasn't without making some damn bold and damn good moves.
The pro Dombrowski argument is he had them in the World Series twice as a prohibitive favorite. So they were perceived by everybody.
And they would have been the favorite if they made it to the 13.
And that was my second point. He built the best team in baseball in 2013.
Yeah.
So it's like he had him on the doorstep twice. As flawed as that 2012 team was, look at the money lines for all 4 games. They were minus 170 or higher in each individual game, even when they were down 3-0. They were clear-cut favorites in that series. Just Vegas odds. You can say whatever you want. That's what they were. And 2006 was even more so. And the Cardinals team doesn't even make the playoffs in 3 of the other divisions. No. So it was a joke that they were even there. So if they were in the American League, they would have been like 12 games back. The
Dombrowski era, I mean, he revitalized a town that is a storied baseball town that had been just garbage for so long. I don't think you can look, if you want to give him an A- because he didn't win the World Series, that's fine. That's splitting hairs. But if you look at it, the longest stretch of sustained success in Tigers history.
The only reason I ding him is because I thought they could have stolen Papelbon I was screaming for it in real time. The guy's one of the best 5 pitchers alive out of the bullpen. He's asking to go. The Phillies are trying to give him away. Take the cancer for a month and a half. Who gives a shit? Anyway, moving on. Dan Campbell. I am the first, second, third, and 53rd person on the anti-Dan Campbell train. I love him as a guy. I'm rooting to be wrong. I like him personally. So this is not like a Matt Patricia thing where I found him so personally distasteful. The Dan Campbell thing, do you buy that this is going to work? I mean, this is getting kind of silly, right?
And anyone who knows me knows I'm no football expert by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know. Like, I like him. I think he's fun. I like the enthusiasm. He lost a lot of people when he didn't go for it on 4th and 4 last week. I mean, even me, a non-football fan, was sitting there going, before the play happened, going, this is the worst option out of 3 to kick a field goal. Even me, and I don't know shit about football, but 3 points to 6 points, whatever, pin him inside the 1 if you want to punt, or just go win the game, and you sell yourself as this aggressive, guy, the grit and whatever, and then you cower when it's the chance to go win a game. By the way, I mean, you go 2-1, this town's insane crazy if they go
Seattle,
2-1.
They'd be looking at 3-1.
And with the Patriots without their quarterback, maybe, I mean, I lost a little bit for him on that call. And then to come out like 15 minutes later and be like, yeah, I blew it. Well, good for you that you admit that. But everyone's screaming that that's the worst possible decision. So
maybe the smart decision market was bad. Al Avila would say the smart decision coaching market was bad, right? I mean, I guess there are degrees of bad. At least he had a little humility about it. But
yeah, the time management, by the way, it's not even just that play, but for the previous 2 drives, I mean, they snapped the ball at the 11, the 12. I mean, you add up all these seconds. They threw the one play on 3rd and whatever, and it was an incomplete pass that would have burned another 40 or 30 seconds. Like, I mean, the game might be over, I mean, the time management skills, and this has been an issue, obviously, not just this year. I mean, that's problematic when you're, a football coach where there's a clock, and the clock is so important.
That's a top 3 coaching pet peeve in football for me. Like, I get not taking it down the 1,
no, you don't want to go
on the
1,
road.
But they left 10 seconds on there.
10, 12.
Every play.
Yeah.
Every play.
Yeah. It's 2.5 minutes left. If you do that a couple of times, it's like a third of the time left.
It's huge.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not a Dan Campbell guy. And that was the worst decision no matter who your specialists are. But when you have arguably the best punter in the NFL and a bottom 5 kicker, the decision's even worse because you have an even better chance of your elite punter pinning them and a much better chance of missing the field goal if you take it. That was insane. And that one loss, and you've said it, if they're 2-1.
No, this town's going crazy if they're 2-1.
Yep.
And then they have a chance to win these next couple games.
Yeah, it could be
it's like, and it's like, Jared Goff's playing so well, not great, but good. And that was better than I think a lot of people might even hope for. So they've just done too much to be 1-2. He blew it. I mean, he cost him that game, and that's problematic.
Made multiple errors in the Eagles game too the week before, by the way.
Yeah, but it was definitely. I mean, for someone who's just a slightly better than casual football observer, there was some troubling things in that game.
All right, you're off the boat. So am I. Good. 2 more, Mister. The new East Lansing. I went up there for the first time in a couple years for the Michigan game of last year. That was a wonderful weekend for many reasons. I didn't recognize where the fuck I was. I feel like I'm in mini Chicago. I have mixed feelings on it. I'm glad that there's more than like the Taco Bell and El Azteco to eat there. There's like actual restaurants.
El Azteco's so good.
Well, I like it, but
I
mean, you can't have the most expensive entree at the most expensive restaurant in a town like East Lansing be $7. Like I don't need filet, but like it can't all be fast food. I mean, let's face it. It's chains come in now. It's like Hopcat and whatever, Pumpkin Latte, Spice Place or whatever. But like they're changed, but at least they're, you can get like a Reuben sandwich that's not a day away from being expired meat. Like I have mixed feelings on it, pro and con. I know, you've been up there a few times since you were trying to, derail the program because you loved Curtis Blackwell and all that stuff, as people claim. But what's your take on it? I mean, you went to school there. It's unrecognizable to me. It's the pros and cons.
It's unrecognizable every time I go. And I don't get up there very often. I mean, yeah, I'll go on campus, when I'm up there, if I'm working. So campus hasn't changed a ton compared to the city itself in East Lansing. So it changes every time I go. It's unrecognizable. So it is what it is. I mean, that's the world. You evolve and you change and whatever. But I liked it back when there was the peanut barrel which is still there. And they go there and then the land shark and go home. So
the benefit of the old East Lansing was you could stand anywhere in downtown and see the entire downtown.
Right. Yeah. It's changed. Yeah.
I liked the aesthetic and the vibe more. So it's like functionally.
And see, it changed so much from when I was there, when you were there. I mean, it just every time I go, it's like, oh, that's new. Yeah.
Have you seen that Graduate Hotel up there?
I'm going to be up in East Lansing tomorrow, actually. So we'll see.
What's going on in East Lansing tomorrow?
Golfing. Yeah, you don't golf. You don't even know anything about golf.
I don't have to golf. Just let me ride with you and I'll walk around. The Graduate East Lansing, they're not like a sponsor. This is not a secret plug or anything, but man, I love that spot. That is a great hotel. That place is
Where is it?
It's right by right across from Rick's. It's like off Grand River.
Oh, okay.
It's in that that old abandoned like kind of the building was abandoned for 20 years. Remember when I went up visiting my brother who's 12 years older than me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, they're fixing that up. It's going to be something soon." And literally, I was there as a student 15 years later, and it still was boarded up. It's like
This is Rick's across the street on the west side?
I don't know directions. It's right by Rick's.
Right across the street.
Well, across the street that way. Yeah, it's not on the campus side.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like right there. You could,
check it out.
Yeah. Rocky Lombardi could hit it with a football. That's how close it is. From
really
Rick's to the. Yeah, it's Rick's. I could do a whole thing on Rick's too, by the way. But
yeah, Rick's was great. They had when I was there, Rick's had the Fridays were $2 pitchers of Busch Light because that's a deal, and for happy hour from like 4 to 8 or something. They had free pizza, worst pizza ever, but it was free, so it was the best pizza ever.
Yeah.
So happy hour was free pizza and $2 pitchers of Busch Light, and it wasn't like these like all personal pitchers. It was like the big, you'd see in the '80s bars with all the cigarette smoke and everything, the big pitchers. So we went there every Friday, and we hosted. The State News was given a radio show on the Impact on Friday nights, and I hosted it one semester with another girl, and we would go to happy hour and then go do the show, and it made for some good radio.
Did the bathroom stalls have doors when you were there?
I don't think so.
So that goes way back. Maybe they've since added doors. I'd be willing to pay $2.50 for the $2 pitcher for them to put a door on there. Not that I was ever into that kind of business there, but it's the principle. Like, and I'm sorry, I have used the facilities, the non-stall facilities at Rick's, and sometimes there are people in there, and that is just, hi, sir. I mean, it was not pleasant. Like, how expensive can a bathroom stall door be, for Christ's sake?
Rick's was fun. Yeah. That was probably where I went, probably the second most behind the Peanut Barrel.
That was my least favorite.
Peanut Barrel was an every night thing.
Rick's was my least favorite bar. My friends, it was like their favorite, so it was a constant source of tension.
Yeah.
But I have lots of constant sources of tension with my friendship circle. You would know.
Yeah.
Let's finish here. The Athletic.
Last one.
The Athletic. I was a huge fan of The Athletic. I openly said I have no idea if this business model is going to work. No fucking clue. It didn't make sense to me. But I love the writers there. I loved past tense, and I love most of them now, present tense. But kind of a flop financially. The New York Times does a Obama-style auto bailout of them. Not really sure where they're going. They have made multiple cuts. They didn't let Colton Pouncey go. Colton got his wish to cover the Lions, and they kind of replaced him, giving my friend Justin Tim some coverage. It hasn't really worked, and I wanted it to work. This whole subscription,
everyone did.
This robust subscription model. Obviously, you guys have graduated to that, a lesser version, a little bit different with the Detroit News. Just The Athletic is an example of the state of journalism finishing here. This could be a 3-hour show, but speed round version. Were you disheartened to see The Athletic not fail, but not really work, at least in terms of how it was originally presented?
Yeah, and they were they're a competitor, and I think there are probably people in the business that were happy or are happy, because that's how, business is. It's, there's a lot of vindictiveness and stuff, but, I've liked the idea, from the get-go, and they have some fantastic writers, some of the best writers on the planet. And a couple of them are in Detroit and in the Detroit market. So, I wasn't necessarily sold that was going to work on face value, that they were going to do subscriptions and there weren't going to be any ads and whatever and all that stuff. I wasn't necessarily sold, because if that would have worked, I think it would have been done already. Yeah, it kind of sucks. I hope that, their New York Times connection will help, because I think it is a good product. I don't think it's quite the product it was. They've also changed their tune a little bit, because it was all going to be, we're not covering the day-to-day stuff, right? We're doing the bigger picture stuff, which was the best part about it. They've started to do a lot more. If you look, a lot more of the beat writer stuff,
Yep.
which is, we were sold that wasn't going to be the case. It was going to be a different animal. But I hope it works out, because I don't have any ill will toward them, a competitor. I mean, I promote some of their stuff. If you read, every day there's something on there still that is just like fun to read. Like, go read the Zach Greinke latest oral history. Like, they've done like 4 oral histories with Zach Greinke in the last 3 since the Athletics started.
That's a treasure trove.
Oh my god! And they just did a new one of just his time with the Royals this year, and all these young people were talking about, he has his own Uber driver. It's just, they have some really good stuff. Really good reporters, really good writers. I hope it works out. They're competitors, but that's all right.
Maybe just take them out of it. The idea, like that model. I am respectful of the fact that everyone's in different financial situations, and it's not about, oh, come on, pony up. But I just think for myself, the bang for the buck that I get, I'm spending a combined, because I strategically time the Athletic on special, but between the Athletic, you guys, and the Free Press, paying like $14 or $16 a month or something. It's under 20, whatever it is. It's hours and hours of enjoyment a month. Like, to me, it's the best buy in town. I'm not just saying that. I love your work and Justin Rogers and Burkett over at the Free.
I think it's fantastic value.
Yeah.
And
please pay people if
you
can.
And it's just, we still get, and that's gonna be another hour, but we still get the people sniping that, when we post stories that are paywalled and whatever, and it's just like, man, where can you go and just expect a product for free? We did it to ourselves. We get it. This whole internet thing was created in the 90s, and we're like, oh, that's cool. Let's all have a web page and put everything on there for free. We did it to ourselves. I get it. We share some of the blame, but you can't go to Big Mac, McDonald's, order Big Mac and bitch that it's behind a paywall. Where can you go and get that for free? And I think that I'll argue that we are a good value. Right now you can go on our website and plug DetroitNews.com, 2 years for $22. I'm like, come on.
That's a,
2 years for $22.
I'll show for you. I'm not being paid on the side. I don't think you can afford to pay me on the side with that rate. Come on. Like, I honestly think it's a steal. And again, I respect people are in different financial situations from each other. But I just think like it's the best bang. I was personally bummed by the Athletic thing. It hasn't failed. It's still up, producing work. But as sort of constructed or targeted, it did not work.
No.
It was a financial flop, and they've had to completely restructure, and the quality hasn't disappeared, but it's been degraded a little bit.
Yeah.
There's no one covering Michigan State every day. There's like one Michigan State article a week now.
Yeah. No, he's not full time.
It's not against him. He's an engineer. Right. He's like fixing machines and shit.
Right. Yeah. No, it's I was excited by the concept. I think everyone in journalism was, because we were excited to see if this would work. And it's not that it hasn't. It just hasn't worked as expected. So as they would hope. And it's still a great product. They still have some fantastic writers.
Well, speaking of great product and fantastic writers, Tony Paul, great to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
You broke the tie today with Chris Castellani.
Did I? Is that official?
That is official. You guys were tied. You guys are doing this kind of yo-yo back and forth. I'd love to have you back if and when the world is shaken by the Aaron Judge signing or the Ohtani trade.
Well, wouldn't that be fun?
But I want you to block off some time for me.
Hey, no.
Evan Petzold
It'd be
doesn't
fun to
return
come
my
here.
calls
It'd
anymore.
be fun to come here before the season and just see where they are and see what the roster. Because I think if you listen to that press conference, and I've been to a lot of press conferences, and again, that one was entertaining for me. And I don't get entertained by very many of these press conferences. That one to me was entertaining. If you listen to it, you just get the sense that, yes, he's going to evaluate and take his time for now, but things are going to change pretty quickly once he makes up his mind what he wants to do.
Dude, you know how cynical I am. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, look who you're talking to.
I know.
How many times have we sat here and I've just shoveled cynicism into your lap from this side of the
you're
table?
Not so cynical on Michigan State. That's where the blinders are.
I don't know. I did a YouTube video that's still up called East Lansing is burning after Luke Fickell turned us down. I can go there. I just don't manufacture it. And this will be stealing a line from Mike Valenti, but it's like, do good things, I'll say good things. Do bad things, I'll say bad things.
Right.
I am not someone to get excited over nothing. Like, if I'm excited, I think there's some, I'm giving myself credibility. There's some weight to it. Like, I'm sorry, there are people in the Tigers fan base, they're shit and gold with what the Tigers are doing every year. I have not been excited about what they've been doing in like 6 years. So I'm just, no matter how it goes, I'm excited that I am excited. I mean, it's sad, but it's true.
And I think a lot of Tiger fans are in that boat. And I'll tell you, that's a big deal. That's a big deal because they lost the eyeballs this year. I mean, after May. I mean, I don't watch them every day. I mean, I used to watch this team religiously every day. I'd see every game. I'd cover a ton of games. I don't even cover them that much anymore because I'm not needed because no one cares. That's the thing. Like, I used to be around this team a lot more than I am now, like physically. I mean, at the ballpark on a regular basis, but they don't need me as much now because there's not the interest. So at least, that's the problem, and we talked about this before. Like, even if you have a bad team, you could be interested,
Oh, yeah.
Like those 90s, I don't know, you're young. Those 90s Tigers team were terrible. They were interesting because they could hit the ball a mile. Like, their lineup was full of guys that could hit 30, 40 home runs. They were interesting. So if you're going to be bad, be interesting. You can't lose the eyeballs. And they lost them this year. And this is a good step in the right direction. I think Chris recognized right away when he fired Avila, that he had to do something bold. And this is way more bold than I was expecting. So I was expecting Burns.
You never said yes or no. So this was the Mike Ilitch moment.
But, yeah, I guess, because I think you can give Avila some credit with AJ Hinch too. So no, I mean, look, Avila identified him and Chris Ilitch wanted him.
Identified him, best manager in baseball. He's sitting there. The White Sox inexplicably passed.
I'm agreeing with you, Justin. That's why I say, yeah, probably this is the moment.
Don't give Avila credit for anything.
Come on, man.
He got AJ Hinch on the radar. Best manager in baseball sitting there wouldn't give you the time of day if you weren't a downtrodden franchise. And if the White Sox hadn't had their head shoved up their ass.
How'd that work out for the White Sox?
I mean, oh my God. Tony
what a disaster. That, by the way, everyone saw coming, including White Sox fans.
The White Sox social media team had AJ Hinch's signature on the fucking graphic. I mean,
he was flying there the next day. The White Sox did the Tigers a tremendous favor. I think that could pay off big time. And not just
that would have been fun having like Lloyd McClendon in that role, but for that. So no, I give Avila no credit for someone falling in his lap. I mean, he identified AJ Hinch. I can't believe you said that. My
point is that was both of them.
What a diamond in the rough that was.
The point is that was both of them that got AJ Hinch here. So I'm agreeing with you. Yes, this is Chris Ilitch's big moment.
I mean, kind of mean. Sorry. I hate that. I hate him.
By the way, they're building a hotel in District Detroit. You hear this?
They are?
They are.
No, they're not.
Like right near the arena. Yeah.
You're fucking with me.
They finally. If you look, they came up with the plan just a couple days ago or weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
And so soon. Only 7 years past.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, considering he said the whole thing was going to be built up by 2018, I'm shocked.
Yeah, but COVID. COVID that happened in 2020.
You saw my bit on that. We did a whole like episode on that. He came out in that Wojo interview and said, Wojo, I mean, to his credit, asked him about the District Detroit, of course, offered no pushback when the preposterous answer came out of Chris Ilitch. Now, Chris Ilitch said, we had big plans for the District Detroit, but nobody saw the pandemic coming. Motherfucker, this shit was supposed to open in 2017 and be completed by 2018.
Yeah.
By your own words. I tweeted the video. So somehow COVID got into a time machine and jumped a couple years in the past and fucked with only the District of Detroit and no one knew about it. Sorry.
No,
I'm trying to be positive, but I really have. They fucked this fan base for 7 years, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And we all knew, the fuddy-duddies, the bozos in this fan base, including myself, knew 5 years ago that this shit, 4 years ago anyway, that shit was not working. We just wasted an entire Olympic cycle.
And it just how does it go? How far it had fallen. Think about how excited this town, including me to an extent, got when this team finished 7 games under 500 last year. I mean, that's how desperate we were to believe that something good was happening. But we almost didn't lose more than we won, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the things we're hanging our hats on are pretty pathetic. I didn't really buy that all that much. It's same thing with this. It's like,
I did because look, they've got some arms. Now, they all got injured. They've still got, they got some arms. And it's unfortunate that Mize is going to be gone for a while in Skubal. And, they get Turnbull back. But they had arms. That's why I was, believing that this could have been a fringe contention. And next year would be the contending year.
I'm hoping the next time I talk to you, whether it's April or December, winter meeting type of thing, that is all positive, because I'm not bringing up Al Avila again. So I like what they're doing. I like what you're doing at the Detroit News always. You're always in my top 5 whenever I release the Spiro Avenue Power Rankings. Yes, you're a friend, but I was a fan before I was a friend of yours. Tony Paul, you're the man. Thanks for doing it.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to come back.
That was
See
Tony
what
Paul.
else you do with the place.
I'm working on it just to impress you. Like
Looks
I
great,
said,
man. It looks great.
The balls are on the table, Mr. Castellani. You have been passed, so you need to show up here just a tie. So no pressure.
He usually does. When I've caught him in the past, he's usually like knocking on the door.
Oh, he doesn't fuck around. He might be in the driveway right now. Say, let's run a doubleheader here. So anyway, appreciate you, Tony.
Thanks,
have
Justin.
to have you back soon. Ben Augusta been working his fucking ass off back there and behind the scenes for us for months. We were off for 7 months. Peyton Thorne was the guest before you, Tony. That's a 7-month gap, and we were talking about the incredible state of the Michigan State program, fresh off an 11-win season. So that may as well have been 7 years ago at this point. So we'll see what happens there. I got a couple fun ones in the hopper. I'm excited, but it's just good to be back. We appreciate everyone out there. Eric Williamson back home. Love you, man. And that's it. Let's do it. We'll see you again soon.